Okay, I believe we can get going. If we'd like to move to the first slide, please. This just covers the bits of news that I want to talk about this week. There's not actually an awful lot going on, but a couple of things just caught my eye. So Aberdeen Asian Income and Pantheon Infrastructure. So the first of those is Aberdeen Asian Income. And you can see the chart here on the screen. It's not particularly impressive, quite flat over the years, but that's mainly down to what's been going on with China, which has always been depressing everything in Asia. And that's given rise to some fairly big discounts. And then, as you can see here from the slide you've got here, which is the sort of snapshot of the Asian Income funds, Aberdeen Asian Income Fund trades on the widest discount, about 11.5. And I think that's a bit undeserved. And I think I want you to remember the sort of Henderson Far East Income one underneath that, which is 3.25 premium. So if you look at the next slide, you can see that actually Henderson Far East Income has by far the worst performance of all four of these trusts. And Aberdeen Asian Income is a lot better than it. And the main difference between the two has been, until very recently, that Henderson Forest Income was on a far, far higher yield than Asian Income. And so, if you look at the next slide, what they are proposing to do is to introduce an enhanced dividend policy. And this one is really quite punchy. So the most we've seen so far when we come to a minute is 6%. This is 6.25. So that's what they're going to pay out every year as percentage of NAV. And they're going to have a continuation vote every 3 years, starting from June 2028 as well. So to give you a bit more detail on this, what I'm going to do is pay out, as it says there, a percentage of the NAV at the end of each quarter. So for March, the end of March, they'll look at their NAV at the end of December and take 1.5625% of that and distribute that as dividend. And part of that will come from the natural portfolio income, but some of that will have to be made up from distributed reserves, so from the capital performance that they've had previously and will have for ongoing. So based on the NAV at the moment, that would imply a dividend in May of about 4p, which would be the dividend for the end of March quarter. But before we get there, there's an extra large dividend coming up in February of 6.78p. So there's actually quite a lot of income to come out of this in the next few months. And I think this might help drive that discount down, working its way up to being a dividend hero. So 16 years of consecutive dividend growth. It's important to remember with these sorts of structures that you're not guaranteed to get that growing dividend in the future, because obviously if the NAV goes down, the dividend will go down. So that's worth bearing in mind. But you are getting obviously a much higher base level of income anyway. They're not changing what they're doing within the underlying portfolio, so there's no change to the way they manage the money. So obviously, this would be how the portfolio performance is going to make quite a big difference to this. If they had a long run of not generating 6.25% as a type of portfolio, then that would eat to the NAV. But obviously, they're not thinking this is going to happen. So if we go to the next page, I wanted to mention Montanaro UK because we didn't talk about it in December, and it actually announced a similar kind of idea on the 6th of December. So it is paying out 1.6% of NAV to make 6% annually. I think maybe it should be 1.5 rather, 1.6. Apologies. To make 6% annually. And at the same time, they actually changed the way they calculate the fees. It was quite interesting, I think. If you look at the chart on the next page, the discount did narrow. So you can see in that red circle a big sort of jump in the share price there. So I do think these things do work. Unfortunately, we've had a period in the last few weeks where we've had much higher rising bond yields have seen all about in the papers, and this has obviously been depressing things. That has meant the discount has very slightly widened out again, and the NAV and the share price have both come off. I think both of those things will be reversed in the next few months anyway. It did seem to work for Montanaro UK. I do think it will work for Aberdeen Asian Income, but it seems that it's not an instant reaction. It may just take time. Probably doesn't help that Morningstar's got the wrong yield on our website. We're going to email them today and get that changed. So that's that one. And then if we look at the next one, Pantheon Infrastructure, I love this fund. It just sort of keeps churning up the results. You can see the NAV just climb. But obviously, along with all the other infrastructure funds, it went to a discount when interest rates started going up. And then you can see that there with the share price sliding for no good reason. But there has been an improvement in that since really about sort of 10 months ago. It's been sort of steadily rising and the discount's been closing. I think that should keep going. Big chunk of the issue with this one, well, not issue really, it doesn't pay as high a dividend yield as some of the other funds in the sector, and about 4.5%, because it's much more like 3i infrastructure than something like HICL or international public partnerships. It's about the total return, and it's got some quite decent numbers. So if we look at the next slide, there you can see it against the sector as a whole. So decent size, 434 million, but there's still one of the sort of smaller ones in the pack. And the discount is way too wide, actually within this peer group, towards the lower end, which is where it should be given the returns. And you can see that what I was saying about the yield there, 4.54. And if we look at the next one, you can see that its returns are actually pretty good. And it's obviously not been going that long, so we haven't got 5-year numbers yet. And the 3-year numbers are held back a bit because obviously it takes time to invest the money and takes time for that to start generating NAV growth. But that is coming through now. And one of the ways it's coming through is with a disposal that's not reflected in the NAV return number there, that 2.91, that I think would catapult its returns back up towards where Cordiant Digitals are. So if we look at what they've happened, on the 13th of January, they said that Constellation Energy was buying Calpine. So Calpine was Pantheon Infrastructure's largest investment, and it's the first time they've actually sold something. Obviously, it had not been going that long, so you wouldn't expect them to have sold anything yet. And actually, even this is sort of coming quite quickly. It's not a clean exit yet, so about a quarter of it's coming in cash, 75% is coming in Constellation Energy shares. Those shares may be locked up for a bit, but anyway, the whole thing is going to take about a year to complete. It values the whole company about $16.4 billion. We're not sure yet what's going to happen to the cash. If you look on the next page, we wrote about it in the last Pantheon Infrastructure note we published in November. So if you want to find out more about Calpine, it's all in there. It's really quite a chunky business, but with all of these things that Pantheon Infrastructure is doing, it's not buying whole companies by itself. It's investing alongside a manager that it likes and has done a lot of due diligence on and is comfortable with. And so Energy Capital Partners, ECP, led on this deal, and it's the one that's sort of calling the shots, if you like. And it's a really big US generation company, 27 gigawatts is a huge chunk of generation capacity, and with a sort of bias to greener technology. So geothermal and solar, obviously battery storage, all that, the green agenda. Natural gas plants are a bit more efficient than coal, which is obviously good. But what they were trying to do was install carbon capture schemes, which are sort of partly funded by subsidies. So obviously we're not quite sure those subsidies are going to still be there with Trump in power. But it doesn't really matter anymore because this deal is done. So if you look on the next slide, these are the numbers. So they said they were going to invest 58 million. I think they actually invested 54. It's the pound numbers you want to look at. So £46 million was what they put into it. It was already valued at 56 by end of December 2023. And I think this exit values it at about 90.8. So they've almost doubled their money, which is pretty good going in a couple of years. And this last uplift, the extra 14 million odd, adds about 3p per share to the NAV. So all good stuff, and a big tick in the box for this company and what it's trying to do. I think that discount should come down further over time. So that's that one. Just very quickly before I hand over to Gary, we've been pushing and Saba. There's more stuff coming out, and there's a very good article that we're about to publish on the website by Cherry Renard, and I encourage you to read that. David put up an article yesterday about voting, and I've just taken a snapshot from this is the Bailey Gifford US growth one. Do please make sure you vote as early as you can, because some of these platforms cut off the voting quite quickly, way before when the meeting is going to happen. The Herald meeting's on the 22nd. I think it's probably already too late to vote on that one if you haven't done it already. So please, I hope you do that. We'll know what the result is by the time I see you next week. But for Bailey Gifford US growth, it's one of the next ones after that, and then you can see what the dates are for the cut-offs on here. And that's our best estimate. This is not a guarantee, which is why I'm saying to you, don't rely on us. Go in there and deal it done now. So thanks very much.